Thank you. Thank you for coming out at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning. I really appreciate it. Usually my speaking notes say slow down, take your time, but I have 20 minutes and the clock is ticking, and they actually say fly through this. So we're going to go fast, a lot of energy, get you up and going this morning. In case you are unfamiliar with who I am and my story, I'm a sort of 30-year journalist, worked a lot with mainstream media, was a science reporter and environmental writer, did a lot of work for National Geographic, Time Magazine, the New York Times Magazine. 3 years ago, I found myself, I live near Seattle, I found myself living all of a sudden in a legal state. And it was the first time I had been sort of confronted with marijuana since college. Cannabis was not my thing. I was very much on the fence about voting yes or no for legalization. So I started taking notes. I'm a writer. It was interesting. We were changing history. And those notes sort of turned into this book called Weed the People, sort of a 2-year dive into a little bit of the history of how America's handled marijuana, but really about how Colorado and Washington rolled out and what it's like to live in a legal state. At the end of those 2 years, I surprised myself by realizing that I had become, through that research, an advocate for regulated legalization, adult use regulated legalization. I think it actually works, and I think that because I live it every day. I'm the father of 2 teenagers. Marijuana is still really not my thing, but I think it's really the way to go. It actually is a sign of progress and not the sort of state embarrassment that I thought it might be 3 years ago. After writing the book, it came out sort of middle of last year, along with the Time Magazine special issue, Marijuana Goes Main Street. I kept writing on it because I find it fascinating, the politics, the economics, the social and cultural change, the history of it. It's just as a writer, it's so meaty. I love it. I love writing about it every day. And I sort of talked myself into a job with Leafly.com. I've been there about 2 months or so, and we essentially, I feel like we get to write the future every day. We deal with states grappling with legalization issues. We deal with social use. We deal with medical use. And we deal with issues of language, how we talk about this. We use the word cannabis a lot, not marijuana or pot so much, sort of as a way to signify that we're stepping into a new legal era. So today I'll talk a little bit about sort of where opportunities are in 2016, sort of based on my experience with Weed the People and also the observations, reportings, and writing that I do every day on Leafly. The short answer to that question is Vermont. If any of you are following what's happening in Vermont, they actually might legalize adult use through their state legislature. While the rest of the country is listening to Donald Trump, the Vermont politicians are quietly making their way toward adult use legalization. That's the short answer. The long answer is this. Here's where we are sort of in 2016 with the state of marijuana laws in the United States. And this is sort of like one of those maps they give you when you enter a national park, and it says very specifically on the map, not to be used for navigation, right? Don't send yourself into the backcountry with this map as your only guide. You will be screwed. And that's how I kind of think of this map, because, yeah, these states are legal, and these other states have medical marijuana, and the other states are decrim. But really, it's a 50-state system out there, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how that's where some of these opportunities lie. That's where the opportunities lie. Example, let me say New York and Nevada are both medical marijuana states, right? Well, that's like saying a box of bourbon chocolate cherries and a bottle of Jack Daniels both contain alcohol. There's vast, vast differences between those two systems. New York is just up and running. They've got a few dispensaries. They're very tight qualifying conditions, and nobody can find the doctors who are qualified to write those conditions. So New York, obviously a massive state, a lot of opportunity, but right now it's so constricted that there's not a lot that anybody can do there. On the other hand, Nevada, also a medical marijuana state, but a very different situation. And that situation is due to one word in the state regulations, and that word is reciprocity. Anybody who's familiar with Nevada knows what power is held in the word reciprocity, which means if you have a legal medical marijuana authorization from any legal MMJ state, Washington, California, Montana, Arizona, you can present that card at the door of a dispensary in Nevada, enter and purchase. I was just in Nevada about a month ago or so, and I went into a couple of dispensaries there. Their system's just up and running, and they're booming. They're doing extremely well. The system is up and running. Other medical states, Michigan, technically they have dispensaries. State officials hate medical marijuana there. There's a lot of raids, arrests, people are having their assets seized, having their children seized. Wyoming, very, very illegal. But right now, there's a weird technicality. Anybody know what's going on in Wyoming? Like, technically, edibles are not quite illegal because how their laws were written. A state judge declared last year that really only leaf marijuana was illegal, so they're trying to scramble to make edibles illegal. So technically, they're kind of legal, but like it's not a market. Don't go after it. California, previously wide open to medical marijuana, medical dispensaries opening up, shutting down in a matter of months. A lot of delivery services going on. Now you've got the MMRSA coming in, and if you're an investor, you've got to know what specifically is going on. I actually was approached by an investment group a couple weeks ago, and first of all, there's no money in writing. You don't want me as an investor. That was the first sign. But they wanted me to invest because there was a dispensary for sale in this town outside of San Diego. So I basically just Googled, town outside San Diego, dispensary, and ban. Because you know what's going on in California, right? A lot of small cities, because of technicality in the law, are banning dispensaries. Sure enough, this town had banned dispensaries, and these guys were looking into buying the dispensary in this town. So know what's going on in those regulations. So given that, here are where some of the opportunities lie, I really think. They're hiding in plain sight in the state regulations. What I mean by that is this. Those of you in the industry know this. State regulations define the playing field. California, I think, is starting to realize this. People in Washington and Colorado and Oregon are already dealing with it and adapting to it. But they set the rules to the game, and there's opportunity to be found within them. Let me give you one quick example, packaging. 3 years ago, I met Ross Kirsch, who founded Stink Sack, and I think he's got a booth out there today. Ross is sort of this amazing packaging genius. He knows all about materials and closures and all this sort of thing. And when Colorado came out with their packaging requirements, I think late 2013, Ross looked at them and saw child-resistant packaging. Nobody in the cannabis industry really knew what child-resistant packaging actually meant, but Ross did because he had expertise in packaging. And so Ross went away and sort of drew up what he thought would be really a child-resistant closure and package. He went over to ArcView Network. Some of you are familiar with the folks at ArcView. They're based here. Pitched ArcView on his new closure, his new child-resistant packaging, got some funding, caught a flight literally that night to China to talk with his manufacturer over there, got a system up and running. I met Ross 3 months later in Denver, on the opening week of retail marijuana in Colorado. He was unloading pallets of his new packaging into a dispenser, into a retail shop, and had this wide, wide grin on his face. And it's like things had worked out for Ross. He's doing all right now. One of the things that Ross did was basically he knew the regs. Here are Colorado's packaging regulations. They just rolled out last week. And check this out. They've got to meet standards for child resistance, not be attractive to minors, this sort of thing. What does child resistance mean? It means there's a little federal number there, 16 CFR, I think 1700.20. Here's what that looks like. It's 9 pages describing essentially the experiment you need to run in order to determine if your packaging is child resistant. I mean, it describes the scene, the language that people can use to talk to the children. It has a whole mathematical formula to determine that that children are of a certain age, 5 years or younger, this sort of thing. The folks who are running retail shops, the folks who are farming cannabis, do not want to go through 16 CFR 1700.20 and figure out how to invent a new packaging system. That's where people like Ross come in and find market opportunities. So sort of to wrap up this point, cannabis in legal states is all about compliance. If you can solve problems for farmers, processors, retailers, solve those packaging problems, solve those software problems. These folks want to farm, they want to bake edibles, they want to greet happy customers at the door, they want to do that legally. If you can help them focus on that, there is a market opportunity for you. Here's a problem that you can help solve right now. Colorado, Washington, pesticides are exploding right now as a problem. Denver basically has a recall every week. A few weeks ago, they recalled 100,000 edibles. 100,000 edibles had to be recalled. If you can help solve the problem of pesticides, the challenge of pesticides, it's not a problem right now in California, it will be. Pesticide problems are coming to California. Please help us solve this problem. Step up to this challenge. If you can offer a way for folks to grow without using dangerous pesticides, banned pesticides, problem pesticides, you're helping to solve the problem, and in a way, you're helping to write the regulation that is coming down the line. Second opportunity, look for people bringing non-cannabis expertise to the cannabis space. This is a refrain that I've been hearing over the last 6 weeks or so from a number of people. I don't mean if you're an electrician with no experience raising cannabis, chuck your trade and start growing pot. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. What I mean is, if you're an attorney with experience in intellectual property law or business and brand licensing, consider entering the cannabis space by bringing that expertise to bear. There are great opportunities here. In a way, it's another opportunity that comes out of the state regulations. If you're a lawyer, why aren't you an expert in brand licensing in the cannabis space right now? At Leafly, we just ran a story last week on brand licensing. And this is a way that a number of companies are finding they can extend their established brand across state lines legally. I think it's a big story in 2016. These folks are doing it right now or already done it. Mary's Medicinals, based in Colorado. Dixie Elixirs, based in Colorado. DB3, who manufactures Zoots, are based in Washington. But they're extending their products, their brands, into these other states, and they're doing so legally through brand licensing. The brand crosses the state. They partner with folks in other states. The cannabis never crosses state lines. Cannabis, the oil, this sort of thing is grown within state, but the brand itself crosses state lines. I was in Nevada, and I was amazed to see Mary's Medicinals, I'm sorry, it was Dixie Elixirs, were already there in Nevada across state lines. So if you're an attorney with expertise in these areas, we can use you. I heard it from Women Grow founder Jane West a couple weeks ago. She told me about meeting a woman with expertise in human resources. Just showed up at a Women Grow chapter meeting saying, I got 20 years in HR. I figured you guys could maybe use some human resources help. And Jane was like, yeah, we could. Same thing with a woman who ran a little contracting business in Pueblo, Colorado, which, if you know anything about Pueblo and the booming growing industry that's going on right now, now that woman is running a major contracting business because she's helping specialize in building out those growing facilities in Pueblo. Shalene Tidal, I was talking to her the other day. She founded the THC staffing group. She's here this weekend. You should meet her. She told me something similar. She said, don't tell me you're willing to do anything to get your foot in the door in the cannabis industry. Tell me what you have right now. Tell me what your expertise is in. Tell me where your knowledge is. And tell me, then we can talk about how we can adapt that to the cannabis industry. I'm sort of your final example here. I've got 30 years of experience in mainstream journalism. I know how to write, I know how to report, I know how to fact check. I know what standards are. I know what voice is, what tone is, what narrative is, what stories and characters and scenes are. So coming to this space from National Geographic and other places has been incredibly exciting, because basically I take all those skills, all those tools, and bring them in to the cannabis space. And we're sort of essentially inventing cannabis journalism as we go. Quickly, I'll move through the next ones here. Third, be a good politician and invest in executives who practice retail politics. Cannabis industry is a political business. It's a small p, small r, retail politics business. If you're out there, if you own a shop, if you're farming, meet your city council members. Meet the mayor, meet the police chief. It makes a huge difference. My own home city of Bainbridge Island, when we first heard that a retail shop was going to open up, city council chambers were flooded with outraged citizens. And one of the reasons they were flooded was the person who owned that license didn't make themselves known. Nobody knew who held the license. And so who do you think was in their heads as the license holder? It was this guy, Walter White. Basically, that's who they imagined is the guy holding the license, right? So that guy was really too skittish to come out. He sold the license to a couple of guys on the island who lived there, who were known, who went around, who met people, said, here's what we're going to do. And one of the license holders is Brendan Hill. If you're a fan of Blues Traveler, you'll recognize Brendan as the drummer for Blues Traveler, and a really well-known, well-liked resident on Bainbridge Island, and now co-owner of Paper and Leaf, which is this fantastic little shop we've got on the north section of the island. Finally, key on products and companies that focus on one or the other, medical use or recreational use, but not both. I'm going to get some arguments on this one. Feel free to come up and tell me I'm wrong afterwards. But the more I get into this, the more I think that recreational use and medical use need to go separate ways. And I put up the word social because I don't like the word recreational. I recreate, I ski, I play old guy hockey on Wednesday nights. That's my recreation. I don't use cannabis as recreation. I use it as a social intoxicant, much like I will use beer or a glass of wine. So I like the word social. But the more I get into this, the more I really hear from people on the medical side and on the recreational or social side, and they have very different desires and needs. People on the medical side want to be able to talk with their doctors about this in a serious way. This was an interesting survey that came out about a month ago or so from folks at RTI International in North Carolina. 1 in 4 patients who have a medical card do not inform their primary physician. It's still too difficult to talk about. 65% have reported an overdose at some point. Very loaded word, overdose. We can talk about it later. It's not that people are dying, it's that they're basically having side effects that they don't like. This is what medical professionals are seeking: standard units of dosage, exact, repeatable dosage, delivery systems that don't come in brownies and Rice Krispies. Those are fine for recreational, but it's something that for the medical folks, it's a stopper. I'm hoping that in 2016, those two systems can start moving apart. My time is about up. I'm going to sum up here. Where to find opportunities? They're hiding in plain sight. In the state regulations, look for people bringing non-cannabis expertise to this space. Be a politician. Invest in people who can work a room, who are retail politicians, who aren't afraid to invite a city council member into their grow. 4, key on products and companies that focus on one or the other, medical use or recreational use, but not both. And hopefully, we'll see in 2016 more movement along the lines of this, my favorite chart. This is tracking the pace of social change, talking a little bit about how issues go like this, and then they just tend to spike. We saw that with marriage equality in 2015. We saw it at abortion in 1973. And that last little red arrow on the right is cannabis legalization, which I'm expecting to take that big spike upwards. That's it, 9:24, and we're on to the next session. Thank you.